It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. A ticking time bomb. How the rising number of children missing school could lead to a growing number of violent young offenders.
The knife incident, what happened?
Just wrong time, wrong time, wrong place.
Wrong time, wrong place.
Tonight, we'll bring you a special report from our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin about the ghost children as young as 13 out of school and already getting caught up in knife crime. Also coming up, thousands of people without running water in Surrey. A major incident is declared and more than a dozen schools are closed as Thames Water apologises for issues caused by Storm Ciarán. Also ahead, I sit down with England cricket legend Stuart Broad following his retirement. And have you seen Steve? We'll find out more about this rare phenomenon spotted in skies across the UK last night. All that and more to come on the UK Tonight. The government has been warned to get a grip on the number of children regularly absent from school or risk a big rise in young offenders. The number of children routinely missing school is double what it was before the pandemic. And the Centre for Social Justice says there's a strong correlation between school absence and crime. Our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin has this special report about the ghost children out of school and at risk.
This is Jayden, and a few weeks ago he was stabbed on the streets of Croydon. Jayden's not his real name and we're not going to identify him. But last week he was caught with a knife. And in the morning he'll appear in court. The thing is, Jayden is just 13 years old.
I'm frustrated that you didn't call me, you haven't said anything about it. And I had to find out from the Youth Offending Service.
He's meeting James, his community worker.
What are the charges now?
2 knife offences.
Is it?
Yeah.
Carrying or robbery?
No, carrying.
Do they reckon that you might get a prison sentence?
Possibly.
And the knife incident, what happened?
Just wrong time, wrong time, wrong place.
Wrong time, wrong place. It is the killer combination. And there's another big problem here. Jayden isn't going to school, and that's putting him in huge danger. James calls it passer, slang for trouble.
Bro, I want you to just get your head down and focus on the school, because all of this stuff, every time you're out of school, you're just at risk of getting in more passer.
True, still.
Do you know what I mean? Look at all of the young, everyone that we know, all of the other young people, they're just out here doing madnesses because they're not in school.
Welcome to Croydon, South London, one of the most dangerous areas of the capital to grow up in, where public services have been decimated and where the council is effectively bankrupt, and where children carry knives and they aren't frightened to use them.
We have children that come here to mourn every day. They've become so desensitized to knife crime, but their journey on the morning, their journey into school, their journey home, their journey in the shopping area is resulting in them having to grieve the loss of a loved one. That's a big thing. This isn't normal. It's not normal. It's not right.
And kids who turn their back on school, in particular, are easy pickings for the gangs.
I think a lot of the older gang members sometimes target young people that aren't in school or aren't in education because they see them as somewhat vulnerable and need attention sometimes, need to feel like they belong because they've been kicked out of school and are almost outcasts to normal society, and they're targeted sometimes.
The number of children regularly absent from school is double what it was before the pandemic. The government has been accused of making little or no progress in getting that number down. This is Josiah. He tells me he skipped loads of school last year.
In secondary, I just had the worst time in year 11. I just wasn't coming in. I was more or less, I wouldn't say frightened, but anxious to come in because of how my school was operating. And I saw the temptations of just like not waking up because of how like tired and how rubbish I felt of being in that school or being a part of it.
What's the risk for
people like you, youngsters like you, what's the risk when they start to drop out of school living somewhere like Croydon?
I feel like the risk is more of grooming, because once you step outside the house and you're not in school, they're going to understand that you don't want this life, and they're going to start taking advantages. So they're going to want to get you into this life, into this game.
And that could have serious consequences in the years to come. The Centre for Social Justice says soaring absence rates could produce nearly 10,000 more young offenders in the next 5 years, if left unresolved.
A classic election issue is law and order and crime. And the CSJ has spent the last year going across the poorest communities to find out what are the biggest issues going. And crime is there, bang in the middle of it, bang in the centre of it. And right now you could do something about that by getting some of these young people back into school.
So you're saying that in a couple of years' time we might see a sort of crime wave?
Yeah, 100%. We're storing up ourselves loads of problems here. We need to get on top of this issue, and we need to get on top of it quickly. This is the whole ball game, this issue. This is our future generations. We've got to wake up to this, and the ticking time bomb has already gone off.
Children permanently excluded rarely return to mainstream school. They often end up in segregated settings called pupil referral units. Some disappear altogether. They are the so-called ghost children.
They're very vulnerable. A lot of them now don't attend school at all. They end up refusing school, so they're just on the streets. They've got nothing to do. They've got too much time on their hands. They've got no money, so they look for methods of making money. And it becomes a downward spiral. And I think school exclusions tend to be the kind of beginning of that downward spiral. It starts from there. There are pupil referral units popping up all over the place to accommodate all the children that are being excluded. So yeah,
it seems like the system is collapsing for a lot of children.
100%. Yeah, it's definitely collapsing. I think the education system is so old and out of date, it doesn't meet the needs of today's children.
How many schools have you been kicked out of now?
What, mainstream schools?
Yeah.
2.
Okay.
Jayden is at a crossroads in his young life. He could sink deeper into trouble, or he could find a route out. It is the lottery of his life.
And Nick is here with me in the studio now. Nick, you've been looking into ghost children for a year now. This is a big investigation for Sky News. Explain to us why you focused in on Croydon, because ghost children is a problem up and down the country, but why Croydon in particular did you focus on for this report?
We wanted to go to Croydon because we wanted to look at the link between absence and crime. And Croydon has its fair share of problems. In 2021, it had the highest rate of teen murders in London, if not the UK. So it seemed like a good place. So we spent a week there, me, producer Andy Hughes and cameraman Andy Brown, to try and speak to youngsters who are not in school. Now, Jayden is not in school. That's because he's been excluded from 2 mainstream schools, and he's also been excluded from 2 alternatives. So he is literally dropping off the radar. And we talk about ghost children. They're not really ghost children because I've met an awful lot of them, but they are, a lot of them, dropping off the radar. And I think this is the most shocking and most serious of all of the aspects of this story that I've been covering all year. Why? Because it has the potential for the most gravest of consequences. Jayden, 13 years old, gets stabbed a couple of weeks ago, decides to carry his own knife, gets caught, ends up in the courts, and so it's a downward spiral. But Jayden, Sarah-Jane, is not alone. The numbers are absolutely huge, double what they were pre-pandemic.
Well, Jayden's story is shocking, but the scale of this is shocking. What's been the government response? Because you highlight, as part of your investigation, that the number of children out of the school system is double what it was pre-pandemic. You've investigated it, we're talking about it, the government is aware of this problem, but what's being done to seek out these children and help them?
Well, look at the numbers. 140,000 children out of school more than they're in. That's double pre-pandemic levels. 1.7 million children missing more than 10% of school. That's double pre-pandemic levels, or near enough. Now, when you ask the government what they're doing, they say, well, we're setting up mentoring schemes in the worst affected areas. They have been telling Sky News that since February. When you ask organisations who drill into the data, like the Centre for Social Justice, they say the government scheme will, at best, reach around 1% of all those severely absent children. So politically, it is actually quite quiet, not just from the government, but Labour as well. We've been asking Labour, what would your plan be if you won the next election? And they don't really have a set policy, although we haven't got their manifesto yet. It might come up. Now, teaching leaders and charities are saying what we need is a register of children who are missing school. They've been asking the government to legislate for that. King's Speech tomorrow. It is absolutely unlikely that that is going to get mentioned. And so politically, the response is not matching the scale of the problem. And we know why a lot of children are missing school. It's their mental health, it's their poverty, it's their special educational needs. And this debate about, and underlying all this is a debate about lockdown. Were the decisions made to lock the schools down for the length that they were locked down for? Was that the right decision? Hindsight's a great thing. But what we do know is that this is a huge problem, but the political response to it from all parties is not matching the scale of the problem.
OK, Nick, thank you. I know you'll continue to keep across this story and we'll speak about it again, I'm sure. Thank you. That's Nick Martin there, our politics and people correspondent. To the war in the Middle East now, and the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says more than 10,000 people have now been killed since October 7th. This afternoon, Hamas leaders held a rare news conference and said Israel was carrying out what they called a Holocaust in Gaza. Meanwhile, the Israeli military says it is making further advances into the territory just over 4 weeks since Hamas's attack on Israel. Media sources in Israel are suggesting that the IDF is expected to enter Gaza City within the next 48 hours. An 8-year-old Irish-Israeli girl who was originally believed to have died in Hamas's attack on Israel on October the 7th could still be alive and being held hostage. Sky's correspondent Cordelia Lynch has been speaking to her father.
Emily Hand was staying at a friend's house in Kibbutz Be'eri when Hamas stormed in and carried out a massacre. The 8-year-old tried to hide. We're in the safe room with our toys, she says. Her family was told she'd been murdered, but now the Israeli authorities believe she may be being held hostage in Gaza.
What do you know about what might have happened to Emily now?
There's a high probability that she's been kidnapped and taken into Gaza. We were informed that she was dead, and then later on there was nobody found that was identified by DNA or whatever, dental records, that she actually was found dead. So you have to presume there's no other alternative. You're either dead or you were taken to Gaza as a hostage, kidnapped.
What has it been like going through that journey of mourning, and now, again, you're left waiting for news?
From 1 week you're thinking, okay, it's all over, the nightmare is over, to, okay, I'm back in it. We're all back in it now. I hope somebody with a heart is taking care of her.
Do you believe they will be?
I have to hope. No matter how well she's being treated, she's terrified every day for the last month. She's going to have her 9th birthday on the 17th of this month. She's only 8 now, but she's going to be 9, and she won't even know it's her birthday. She'll have no cake, no party, no friends around. Just another day of terror. But yeah, we want her back. We want to hug her again. We want to see her dancing again, and singing again. It will take time, but if they give us Emily back again, we will do it.
Here in the UK, the Metropolitan Police have asked protest organisers to reconsider plans for a pro-Palestinian march on Armistice Day. The march is due to take place in London on Saturday, with the Prime Minister condemning the idea as provocative and disrespectful. Well, Sky correspondent Ivor Bennett is at the Cenotaph for us this evening. Ivor, we have had that statement from the Metropolitan Police today. What has been their appeal? And we've also had a response from the Home Secretary to their statement tonight.
Yeah, so the Met has been under growing political pressure ahead of this planned demonstration on Saturday because it falls on Armistice Day. And earlier they had said that they had been considering whether or not to ban it outright. Tonight, for now, they've said that they're not going to ban it, instead issuing this appeal to organisers for them to urgently reconsider, following a meeting in which organisers refused to postpone the march. Their reasoning is that they say the risk of violence and disorder linked to breakaway groups is growing. It's not appropriate to hold any protest in London this weekend. But this is not just a policing issue, it's also an increasingly political one, as you point out, with a number of politicians weighing in, criticising this planned demo. And despite the Met stopping short of any ban, we have had a response from Suella Braverman, who's just recently written on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, saying, "I welcome this statement from the Met Police. The hate marchers, as she calls them, need to understand that decent British people have had enough of these displays of thuggish intimidation and extremism." But I think it's worth just considering the background to this planned demonstration. So for the last 4 Saturdays in a row, there have been large pro-Palestinian marches through central London, attracting as many as 100,000 in some cases, calling for an end to Israel's bombing of Gaza. In the context of this coming Saturday, November 11th, organisers say they're going to avoid the Cenotaph. It'll begin 2 hours after the planned minute silence, so won't infringe on events at all. But even so, it still attracted a lot of criticism and just underlines how politically charged this issue has become.
Ivor, thank you. Thousands of people in Surrey still don't have running water tonight. This is after Storm Ciarán caused a power outage at a treatment plant in the county. Thames Water has apologised for these ongoing issues, with as many as 12,000 people possibly affected. A major incident was declared in the county over the weekend, and more than a dozen schools didn't open today. Sky's science correspondent Thomas Moore has this report.
For a second day, 12,000 households in Surrey have had to queue to get water. Their taps have run dry, not because of drought, but because of too much rain. Thames Water blames Storm Ciarán for shutting down a treatment works in Guildford. Not good enough, say local residents.
I think it's a poor excuse, really. I think it's underinvestment over the years, in that this is what's going to happen more.
We pay quite a lot of money into this, so I think that they should be able to have, second options.
It seems we come to a standstill in any sort of, different weather conditions.
Thames Water says Storm Ciarán caused the power to fail at 3 treatment plants in the early hours of last Thursday. Electricity was quickly restored at 2, but it took 4 days to get the Shalford Waterworks in Guildford back on stream.
The storm that we had caused one of our fuses to trip, and that caused then some issues with the transformers there that had to be replaced. And we did see challenges with bringing in some of the quality of water from some of our river supplies.
As the climate changes, utility companies are facing new challenges. Extreme weather that was once only expected rarely is now much more common. Water companies are supposed to report to government what climate risks they're exposed to and then explain how they're managing them. But storms and floods shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. So the question remains, are they resilient enough? In 2007, severe flooding knocked out the water supply to 350,000 homes in Gloucestershire for 2 weeks. A report at the time said lessons needed to be learned, but experts say companies still aren't doing enough to stress test their systems.
These supplies do need to be resilient. Doing the alternative, which is what is happening in Surrey at the moment, providing bottled water, is both extraordinarily expensive and inconvenient, particularly for disabled people, elderly people.
Thames Water is building a 5-mile pipeline in Surrey next year, so supplies can be rerouted if one treatment plant fails. but infrastructure in many other parts of the country remains vulnerable in a warming world. Thomas Moore, Sky News in Surrey.
The UK's smallest city will soon be without a single bank. The Lloyds branch in St David's in Pembrokeshire is set to shut at the end of this month, meaning that the city will not only lose its last bank, but also is only free to use ATM. The city's local MP has written to the chief executive of Lloyds Bank, asking them to consider alternative banking options for members of their community. Well, St David's City Councillor Bethan Price joins me now to talk about this. Thank you so much, Councillor, for coming on to the UK tonight. What's been the reaction of the local community?
Oh, just another blow to the city here in St David's. We are a very ageing population as well, and we rely on tourism as well. We had 3 banks here in St David's, and Lloyds Bank was our last remaining bank, and it came as a blow when we found out that at the end of this month, the 27th of November, Lloyds Bank will be closing its doors for the last time here in St David's.
What were the reasons given for its closure? This is becoming a growing trend, high street banks, the branches shutting down, but usually a town or city is left with at least one. You'll have nothing. What reasons were you given for shutting it?
The usage of it, really. And I think a lot of people now go on to online banking. But what they have forgotten here in St David's, it's open 3 times a week, and it's part of the community. People, it's the Welsh language. People want to speak to somebody. They don't want to be on a computer screen. And the ageing population in St David's, they don't know how to use the internet, you know. And in the summer, the tourism in St David's is phenomenal, and we are relying on the tourism, and to get rid of our only bank in St David's next summer is going to be a disaster.
Yeah, it changes the face of the community. And as you said, there's a cultural aspect to it as well, because I understand that the current manager of that branch is a Welsh speaker. So again, it's a cultural change as well. What have you noticed about what's happening to your community? Because we talk about pubs shutting, about post offices going, now banks. How does that change the face of a city? What does it do to the community?
It just takes out the soul. As I say, like the bank, the people come in, especially on those days, to go to the bank, then they go to the local supermarket, and it's now our closest bank would be 15 miles away. So if you have to go to the nearest big town to use the bank, they'll probably start using the supermarkets and everything in those bigger towns. And our little city will just decline, which is, hopefully it won't.
Well, I know that, you know, letters have been written to the head of Lloyds Bank for a reconsideration. Do you think there's any chance that the decision will be reversed? Do you still hold out hope?
We hold out a tiny bit of hope, but as I say, it is on the 27th of November, the doors will close.
OK, Bethan Price, St David's City Councillor, thank you so much for speaking to us about it on the UK Tonight. A lot of people getting in touch on social media with their views about local bank branches shutting. It is a growing trend. Thank you so much for your time.
Deal. Thank you.
Still to come on the UK Tonight, around 100 Just Stop Oil activists have been arrested after protests at the National Gallery today and on Whitehall in central London. Also ahead, 2,000 jobs could be at risk in Scunthorpe as British Steel announces plans to shut down their blast furnaces. And 4 men have been charged after the theft of a fully functioning golden toilet worth £4.8 million. We'll have the details.
I like to take recycled cards, mostly like birthday cards, Christmas cards, things that people share that are affectionate to each other. And then I spray those cards and then I cut them into little petals and then I make these lotus-like artworks. I first started to come to using this material because I was thinking about like consumerism and consumption and things like that and what happens to waste. And instead of me producing more things to add to the world, I was thinking, what can I use that's already out in the world and make something beautiful out of it? My art is really, it's almost like a therapy to me. I love what I do, and it's been able to enable me to deal with difficult things mentally, physically, and make something positive from that experience. I've always made things, even when I was young. I've loved art my whole life, and and now I'm just really fortunate that I'm able to do it full time. It's something that I love to do. It's just, yeah, it's really important to me. Yeah, so I started working with a school in West London. It was a failing school, and I used to go to the school and do workshops there. Then I brought them into my studio, and then I was doing workshops there. And then I started to invite them to like really big shows and having a really nice tour. So they were really engaging in the arts in a really new and different way, which really inspired them.
And are you doing that partly because you would have really appreciated that at that age?
I have my heart goes out to anyone that's left behind, especially young, and anything that I can do to help. I want to help.
Because you spent time in the care system yourself, didn't you?
That's correct. Yeah. I think that it's. You can talk about it as in like sharing it with other people, but when you go through that experience, it's a completely different thing. And people that are going through those situations and don't have guidance from older people, I think it's really important for me to understand from their perspective and really like give some guidance and help.
Welcome back. You're watching the UK Tonight. Here's what's coming up. Tomorrow's King's Speech promises pomp and pageantry, but what else should we expect? We'll have the latest from our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. And England cricket legend Stuart Broad tells me all about life after the sport and why he doesn't like the R word. Find out more about that in just a few minutes' time. But first, let's take a look at some of the other stories making news in the UK tonight. And a man has been found guilty of attempting to murder two elderly worshippers by setting them on fire after they left mosques in London and Birmingham. 29-year-old Mohammed Akbar prayed with the congregation and then waited for his victims outside before spraying petrol on them and setting them alight. Both of his victims needed hospital treatment after the attacks. Around 100 Just Stop Oil protesters have been arrested. This is after two demonstrations in central London today. Two people were arrested at the National Gallery after they did this to Rugby Venus painting, the Rugby Venus painting. The Met Police saying the two activists had been arrested on suspicion of causing criminal damage. And around 100 demonstrators stopped traffic along Whitehall earlier today, just near the Cenotaph. The activists have hit out at what they called lies, accusing them of targeting the war memorial, instead saying that they had been moved to the base of the monument after being arrested by police. British Steel has confirmed plans to close the blast furnaces at its plants in Scunthorpe and Teesside, which puts 2,000 jobs at risk. The business, which is owned by China's Jingyi Group, wants to replace them with electric arc furnaces, making the process more sustainable. It's all based on getting more money from the government, but the firm is hoping the changes will ensure a competitive future for industry in Britain. And 4 people have been charged with stealing a gold toilet from Blenheim Palace. You may remember this story. The 18-carat gold toilet, which had been valued at £4.8 million, was dislodged back in September 2019, causing significant damage and flooding. All 4 people are aged between 35 and 39. Charges include burglary and transferring of criminal property. All 4 will appear at Oxford Magistrates Court later this month. And talking of spending a penny, there could soon be a relic on the Isle of Man. The government there encouraging businesses to round prices to the nearest 5 pence as it looks to phase out the 1p and 2p coins. The island's treasury stopped minting the pennies back in 2016 because the cost of making them outweighed their value. But nearly half the island's population disagree with the idea. Residents are worried that businesses will round prices up rather than down. Tomorrow's King's speech promises pomp and pageantry, but it will also be the moment that the government reveals all the new laws that it wants to pass over the next year. Some of the legislation has already been announced or trailed, including a somewhat controversial plan to tackle homelessness. But what else should we expect? Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates.
In here, they turn promises into laws. But which promises are to be honoured is revealed by the monarch, who comes every year or two from Buckingham Palace. King Charles now poised to reveal dozens of bills his government claims it wants to pass into law before an election. Joint top of the list, energy security.
We'll be bringing forward legislation that supports our North Sea oil and gas industry, supporting the 200,000 jobs in that sector, but also reducing our reliance on foreign imported energy. That's the right thing to do.
More fossil fuels means more anger from Green groups. Rows always helpful for a party trying to get noticed. This, campaign group Just Stop Oil in Whitehall, each bill designed to speak to a different set of voters. Housing reform for renters and landlords to show the young this government understands the costs. A ban on tent cities, curbs on charities, picking a big fight designed to get noticed. And reform to media regulation, hoping to get newspapers on side in the run-up to a general election.
This is the first King's speech for Charles as monarch. It's the first for Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. It's not about a big, bold reform plan, passing lots of laws. It's about trying to win the next election. It's about grabbing attention. But very senior Tories tell me that there's nothing in the King's speech that isn't priced in. One person in Cabinet tells me that it's just a bit meh.
The Conservatives need something dramatic to convince voters to stick with Rishi Sunak in the red wall seat of Hyndburn in Lancashire.
He's not a man of the people at all. He's far removed from societies like this.
Not really seeing progress in the UK from him. So he does need to up his game.
He doesn't represent me. But then again, I'm not sure that the other chap does on the other side either.
But to attract voters, the King's speech needs to be more than just the sum of its parts.
And while individual measures such as those aimed on crime and on smoking bans may well prove popular with the public, they don't have much faith at all in terms of them dealing with issues such as immigration and asylum. What the public really want from the government right now are concrete issues to deal with the number one issue facing the country right now, according to them, which is the cost of living.
Getting measures into the King's speech is only the first barrier to overcome. Getting the public to notice and believe that they'll make a difference is the real challenge. Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Still to come on the UK tonight, I sit down with the England cricket legend Stuart Broad, telling me all about what's next after his retirement. Welcome back to the UK tonight. Now, when England cricket legend Stuart Broad stepped away from the sport 3 months ago, many were a little surprised. The fast bowler was at the top of his game, tormenting the Australian batsmen throughout the summer in what turned out to be a very memorable Ashes series. However, the 37-year-old knew the time was right and went out with a bang, hitting a 6 with his last shot and getting a wicket with his final ball in Test cricket, something that has never been done before. So what does life after cricket have in store for one of the legends of the game? I sat down with Stuart Broad a little earlier to find out.
I always knew that I wanted to try and finish playing for England. I wanted my last ball to be for England. And this summer was one of the most exhilarating, exciting Ashes series I've been a part of. England and Australia's the Ashes series have had a big part of my family's history, and I've loved playing in them. And I was still bowling really nicely. I was still really enjoying it, and I wanted to leave the game loving it. I didn't want to get to that stage where I felt slightly over the hill, maybe my body let me down or I lost form. And my lasting memories of cricket would have been of slightly negative ones. So it was a really difficult decision, don't get me wrong. You know, it's not something I took lightly, but it was quite a brave call to do because I knew I had a couple of years left in me. But ultimately, deep down, I wanted to finish at the top. And to guarantee that, I had to go on my own account, really.
And also, what I found refreshing about when you announced your retirement was you were very honest about the fact that you've got 2 girls in your life. You have a partner and a young daughter, Annabella, who is a year old now. Year old. And I thought that was really refreshing, actually, for a sportsman to come out and say, I have a young family and this is my new focus now. How much was that part of the decision?
Big part. Yeah, a big part. I mean, it's... international cricket takes you away from home a lot. It's a lot of travel, and ultimately it's the travel that's out of your control. You go where the training is, you go where the matches are, and it's incredible. You know, I've loved every moment of my career. But when Annabella came along and going away became harder, I didn't feel the joy that I used to feel when I was going away for 5-6 weeks at a time. And I feel so excited about the next chapter of my life. I certainly don't believe in like the R word, the retirement word. I'm certainly moving careers, but moving careers with a bit more choice as to where I can spend my time, and a lot of that time will be with Molly and Annabella, because it's been the most incredible year. It's you know, any new parent will know it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's, you know, I want to be around for her upbringing. I want to be able to experience so many things with her. You know, it's only a short period of your life you get to have young kids. So feel very lucky that she's happy and healthy and want to be there, you know, as a dad for her.
What is next for you? Because, you know, the R word coming along at the age of 37, which, you know, in any other career, that's when most people are just getting started. For you, it's the end, but as you said, the start of something new. Where do you go from here? What is it you want to do?
Yeah, great question, because I think it's quite a scary time for a sports person, because you're right, you move away from something you've loved doing at quite a young age, but also then you're behind other professionals who have been maybe focused on their careers for the previous 10 years. Ultimately, I want to stay in the game of cricket. I love the game of cricket. It's my biggest hobby. I've got a wealth of knowledge that I've built from playing for England for 17 years, which, whether that's sharing that with young players in a coaching capacity or whether that's on the punditry side.
Throughout your career, have you noticed a change in terms of sports people talking about failure more and being able to talk about it in a way that they turn it into a positive? Because a lot of people now address their failures as much as their successes, saying that actually those failures contributed to the sportsman that they became, and they've taken something away from that. What have you addressed in the book about failures and how you've dealt with them? And could you pick out a key one that you think was a turning point for you as a cricketer?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I actually found the book really therapeutic to write, because I approach things throughout my career that in sport you're always looking forward, you're always moving on. So if you had a bad day, you're like, what's next, what's next? So it's great to actually visit things that have gone drastically wrong and what I did learn from them. And, you know, I got hit for 6 sixes in 2007, Yuvraj Singh in Durban in India, which was a catastrophic day for me, really. It was awful. It
was in the 2020, right?
Yeah, it was. And, you know, I was young, I was 21, 22. I remember it just being a bit of a a fuzzy feeling. I didn't focus on anything. I didn't concentrate on anything particular. I didn't prepare very well for that game. I had no routines. So it was a big failure. But ultimately, I think a lot of sports people's failures come at 25, 26, and then it takes them a bit of time to learn from it, and then they peak at 30. Whereas I think that experience happening so young, I actually managed to get my routines and structure together. So by the time I was 26, 27, I was being able to perform quite consistently. And I learned so much about mental routines, mindsets. You know, my dad told me at 15, he thinks international cricket's 80% mental, 20% technical. And at 15, I'm like, what? What are you on about? I'm in the nets all the time, I'm catching it. But actually, having finished my career, I think it's more. I think it's 90% mental. You know, building a structure and routines around you that look after you. And actually, from 26, 27, I used to write notes most days, not every day, but certainly this Ashes series every day of how I was feeling in the morning. And I think the older I got, the better I got at being honest with myself. I'm allowed to admit to myself I'm feeling nervous. And I'd write down, feeling really nervous this morning. Why am I feeling nervous? How am I going to counteract that? And actually, day one of the Ashes at Edgbaston, I was looking back through my notes with the book, and I'd written how nervous I was feeling. My legs were feeling heavy, although I'd not even started the game yet. And I wrote down, you know, talk to some teammates, just not in a negative way that I'm feeling nervous, but how are you feeling? And
was that particular to you, or is mental health and looking after yourself in that way something that's talked about more in cricket, whether it's at county level or international level?
Yeah, that's been one of the biggest evolutions in my career.
Because you're away from your family so much, travelling, the pressure. It probably wasn't
talked about, and now the relationships have grown so much within the group and the support staff that it's a very open environment. So I had no problems with going up to Jimmy Anderson going, Jim, how you feeling, mate? You good? He's like, a bit nervous, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm feeling the same. I said, my legs are feeling heavy. And he's like, yeah, mine are too. What should we do about that? Oh, it's great, you're feeling the same. What should we do about it? And then then I'm not feeling nervous in my own head. I'm thinking, it's just me, it's just me. You open up the problem and actually you solve it. Because we just went for a bit of a jog, we kicked the football around and it freed us up a little bit. So, I think note-taking was probably... I used to write my feelings, write 3 thoughts and write 3 things I'm grateful for every morning with a coffee. And that was probably held me mentally as strong as I could possibly throughout my international career, I think.
What's the state of the game that you leave behind in terms of, there's always the debate about there are too many formats of cricket at the moment, so many tournaments. And of course, England at the World Cup. I mean, there was a quote I read today that was something like, reputations take years to build and moments to destroy. What do you think the state of the game is at the moment as you walk away from it as a player?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think just touching on the World Cup, it's been a disastrous World Cup. We can't hide away from that. You know, we've got really talented players, but a whole group of players that have lost form at the same time is really unique. And I don't think that means, rip up the strategy and start again. I personally would keep Joss Buttler in charge. I'd keep the coach in charge. Yes, a freshen up of some faces in that side, which will come naturally. I think you're going to have players move away from the one-day format because the next World Cup's 4 years away. But actually the strategy of that really attacking cricket and playing without fear and driving the game forward is exactly what we need. We just might need a bit of a few fresh faces to drag that forward.
The future's bright then on the field in your point of view, but cricket has had to answer, particularly in the county games, some uncomfortable questions recently about racism in the game, and it's something that, the ECB are not shying away from. They're saying they're tackling it, they've got a plan in place. What's your view on that in terms of, the game of cricket and it being diverse and inclusive?
I think it's a really strong conversation to have because as an England player, you walk onto the field and there's announcements around the ground and it's like cricket's a game for everyone. Well, it's no good just being words. That has to be put into action. And, I think it's really important that, of course, players take a lot of momentum of those words and try and put it into action. And ultimately, when I look back at my upbringing, you're so inspired by the role models you can see. So getting the players out into the community to get kids wanting to be them. I think the England team, particularly that won the 2019 World Cup, was a really diverse team with different religions and brilliantly led by Owen Morgan. And we created heroes out of English cricket players in that period of time. And, you know, whether the game inspired enough kids to want to play the game from that, probably not.
Mm-hmm.
And questions need to be asked as why and what can we learn from that, and actually, you know, get the players out there, get coaches out there and spread the word of cricket. Because for me, ultimately, until you've hit the ball, until you've bowled a ball that hits the wickets and taken a great catch, it's very hard to fall in love with the game of cricket. So get the game out there to every community in every city, and we'll find talent, because we know the talent's in this country and we know the love for the game is there. We just need to expose it.
Coming up on the UK Tonight, have you seen Steve? We'll tell you all about the rare phenomenon that lit up skies across the country last night.
I'm Helen Ann Smith. I'm Sky's Asia correspondent, and I'm based here in Beijing. My most memorable story was covering the extreme zero COVID restrictions.
A massive COVID wave is sweeping this city, but officially, almost no one has died.
This is a 4-lane dual carriageway, completely shut off. Some things are being allowed in, but actually the only thing we've seen coming out is an ambulance. The message from China is clear. This is a modernised military, absolutely able to fight an international war if needed. Is this military ready?
We are prepared to face every kind of challenge.
My biggest challenge is adequately telling the stories of the Chinese people, even when the authorities would prefer me not to.
Hey.
By the rules, we are allowed to film in the streets.
To the left.
I will always remember the atmosphere at the Shanghai protests. It was an electric mix of excitement, fear, and defiance, and a sense that history was being made. It's hard to express just how incredibly unusual these scenes are in China.
There are people who are afraid.
On the streets of Xinjiang, there is still a tension. Heavy police, a sense they're always watching.
It's really an incredible eeriness to this place, and it just is completely abandoned. The Chinese housing market, for so long a driver of growth, is now a real liability. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
It's actually hard to describe the cold here. It's so intense. It literally takes your breath away.
I can't tell if I'm moving it or it's moving me, but it's a very strange feeling.
The world is watching what's happening here.
Welcome back to the UK Tonight. Now, have you seen Steve? We're going to tell you all about the rare phenomenon that lit up the skies across the country last night. But first, Jules is here with the sport. We were just chatting in the break there about Stuart Broad, my interview with him just then. He did a soccer special with you.
He did.
On Sky
He's
Sports
great,
News.
isn't he? He knows his football as well as his cricket.
There you go. Well, maybe that's something you can pick up again in retirement. Come and be a pundit on the football rather than the cricket. But we are going to talk about tonight's football. What's going on? It's all kicking off.
Yeah, Mauricio Pochettino is back at Tottenham, now the Chelsea boss. He was such a popular man as the Spurs manager, took them to the Champions League final. He's back trying to beat them tonight and deny Spurs the chance to go top of the Premier League. It's coming towards half-time, and it's been an absolutely epic first half. Honestly, Spurs flew out the traps. They're looking to go top of the table, took an early lead through Kulusevski. That was just the start of a topsy-turvy first half. Then Chelsea got a penalty awarded by VAR. Christian Romero was the guilty party. He's been sent off. And so a game that Tottenham were absolutely dominating the first 20 minutes or so. Now they're down to 10 players for the rest of the match. Nearly half-time, and Chelsea, you might say, favourites after Cole Palmer scored.
Jules, I'm so glad you're here tonight as a Tottenham fan, because obviously I'm working, I'm not being able to watch it, so it's good that I've got you here.
Good stuff, and it's over on Sky Sports Premier League. But let's bring you the rest of the day's sporting headlines.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Now this might look like any old bus stop in South London, and for most of us, that's exactly what it is. But for Isaac Chamberlain, this represents something much bigger, because this is the place where he decided to change his life forever.
Some of the stuff that I saw when I was growing up, a bit crazy. Gang violence, stabbings, you see police raids and all of that. If you're grown into it, you don't really, how can I say it? You don't really think it's anything crazy, do you know what I mean?
At what stage did your eyes become open to this as something that you actually might be involved in?
No, you don't really look at it like that. It's kind of like you're just having fun with your friends that you've grown up with. You start off obviously playing football together, and then everyone's together, and then one person starts doing something and then everyone joins in, and then it's kind of like a clique of friends, then it turns into a gang, and it kind of goes that way. If you're from a certain area, everyone kind of knows everyone, do you know what I mean? Everyone's familiar with everyone, and they're like, hey, yo, little man, come over here, da, 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 da. How you doing, you right, whatever, and you see them with their chains and their money and stuff, and you're thinking, bro, I want to be like him.
Is that the appeal?
Of course, like they have the money, they have all the girls and all of that, and you're like, well, I want to be like them. They're the top guy.
So what were you doing?
Sell drugs or give this package to this person and come back with whatever they give you. Don't really look in the bag. But then obviously you start carrying knives, then you start, holding things for people and all of that. And yeah, man, you just don't know how it could go. The rabbit hole gets real deep, man.
Was there a moment where you thought, this isn't something I want to do anymore?
Yeah, in one moment, obviously, it was near Knightsfield Estate.
Take us back to that day. What were you doing?
Obviously, picked up some Class A drugs. He was on the bus, I think it was, 133 or 333. Maybe stopped on this exact bus stop. And then obviously we're coming out, we're thinking, yeah, job's done, whatever. We see a lot of police doing stops and searches right over there. And obviously,
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Right, time now for a quick look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
It's unsettled for the week ahead with showers in the west and more general rain on Wednesday, but many eastern parts will be fine before then. There'll be quite a windy evening with showers in the west, but most eastern parts will be fine. Much of the east staying fine overnight. Showers in the west, they'll spread across southern Scotland and northern England for a time. Clear skies and relatively light winds over northeast Scotland and the southeast of England will bring a patchy ground frost and fog in places. Tomorrow morning, breezy with showers running into the west, but eastern parts, again, looking mainly fine.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, the Northern Lights have put on a stunning show across parts of the UK, stealing the limelight from yesterday's bonfire night fireworks. Bit of a damn squid, that, wasn't it? The Northern Lights lighting up much of the British Isles from Orkney and Donegal to parts of southern England, including over Stonehenge. They're normally only visible in Scotland and the far north of England. Tonight, however, we need to talk about Steve. And to join us, to tell us exactly, not who, but what Steve is astronomer and broadcaster Mark Thompson. Mark, thank you for coming on to the UK tonight. So what and where is Steve?
Well, we all saw the aurora display, which was a fantastic reminder that we interact with the solar system. It's the energy charged particles from the sun that cause the atmosphere, the gas in the atmosphere to glow, and that gives us the northern lights, the aurora borealis. Steve is a little bit more rare. It is related to the northern lights by way of the activity from the sun, but it appears as this kind of surreal streak of light across the sky. Sometimes it appears purpley pink in colour, and sometimes, in particular last night, it appeared to be quite white. And we believe it's some form of powerful stream of plasma. Now, if you cast your mind back to school days, you probably remember there are three types of matter. There's solid, there's liquid, and there's gas. Well, actually, there's a fourth type of matter called plasma, which is a gas which is electrically charged. And Steve is a powerful stream of plasma racing through the atmosphere. And it looks quite wonderful. It's quite rare to see, though.
Why is it called Steve? That's the first question that sprung to mind when I heard about it today.
Well, there are supposedly links to the kids' movie Over the Hedge. If you remember in that movie where this hedge appeared to the animals one morning, they decided to call it Steve to make it less scary. There's rumoured to be links to that, but it's an acronym for its official title, which is a strong thermal emission velocity enhanced. And that gives you a clue that actually it's quite high temperatures. And it's the velocity of the plasma through the atmosphere which gives us that wonderful light colour. I kind of prefer the Over the Hedge story, though, rather than the official title.
Yeah, me too. I was hoping it wasn't an acronym. Just in terms of how rare it is, I mean, it's classed as separate almost from the Northern Lights. It's so rare. How comes we've been able to see it over the UK, and are we likely to see it again? Because, you know, people seeing the Northern Lights in parts of the country that it isn't ordinarily seen, it's quite a treat for people.
Yeah, it is, you know, and it is related to the activity on the sun. So we do get, oh, sorry, my light's gone off. A long story about why I'm sat in my van, but I shan't bore you with that. It is related to the activity on the sun. But, you know, I've only ever seen it once before from Norfolk, where I live. But last night, because we saw the Northern Lights, a very powerful display of lights, which is caused by this massive burst of solar particles or electrically charged particles from the sun, and that also drives the Steve phenomenon. So you tend to need...
Well, Mark, we've run out of time, but we're going to put more about it on our website. Thank you so much for sharing these wonderful pictures. Thank you.